right, I see we have a big crowd tonight, so I'm going to ask for your patience. We're just going to try to roll downhill here. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. Again, I'm going to ask those of you that are here, if you have some conversations, if you take those outside. And if you got your cell phones, could you make sure your ringers are turned off? Every time I say that, I always leave my ringer on, and my phone usually rings, but it's off this time, so we ask you to give you a chance to do that. So. All right. First, we have a public hearing. It's a consideration of an intent to enter into a loan agreement and a principal amount not to exceed $7,300,000 and authorizing and approving a bond purchase agreement for general obligation refunding bonds series 2017A.
So in regards to both this one and the next one, the first one is refinancing of an existing bond for cost savings. Still haven't heard back from Travis as to whether they're ultimately saying this makes sense to do or not with the bond environment. He plans on being here next week. Part of the process that we went through with both the 2017A and 2017B involved doing a ratings review. We went to Standards & Poor's and asked them to review our current financial position. They returned us as I think it's an A+, which is the same rating that we had last year. They leave us as considered a, what's the term on that? Stable. They talked about some conditions that could ultimately move us positively in the future.
15%.
Getting to a 15% cash balance is one of the primary things that they talked about. The way they do their ratings, leaving it at the stable means that they do not anticipate that kind of a rating change occurring next year. They do leave out the possibility of 2 years out, and I would say it's more realistic that it's a good 3 years out prior to that occurring. The other alternative they had, besides seeing something occur with getting to the 15% cash balance and achieving all of the targets within our financial policies, was to see a change in our local economy. They rate our, I don't have the rating in front of me, but they talked about our local economy being challenged. We consistently rank below national averages for per capita income, essentially. Which puts us with that challenged rating. So we have seen a lot of positive things occur here locally on an economic scene, but as they make comparisons, our economy compared to other communities is still below average. So that's one of and again, those were the two factors that they looked at that commented that weigh on our ability to move up in a ratings classification. Again, Travis will plan on being here next week, and if the savings aren't adequate to make refinancing be worthwhile in terms of cost savings, this one will ultimately be recommended not to take action on.
Okay.
The second item in here, the $7.8 million GEO corporate purpose bond, the Series 2017B is actually looking to be $10 million. The public hearing is for the portion that we have not held a public hearing on previously. We previously held a public hearing for the police station renovations. We had the authority for up to $4 million. We're looking to do $2.2 million of borrowing. The $7.8 million is the sales tax TIF, or sales tax increment piece for the flood improvements. The state sales tax growth is being used to finance this next project. I think it's in here for $5.5 million in that neighborhood, possibly a little bit less than that. The remaining amount is for 3 different TIF projects. The roundabout that is part of the Silgan RISE project. Our local match on that was projected to be done out of TIF financing. Agency street improvements associated with the GE project is our local match on that is out of TIF financing. And I don't even remember what my third project is, Stephanie, which is also a TIF project, east of Highway 61 on agency. The majority of that is TIF. So those account for the other 2.5 million range of that borrowing amount. And again, Travis will be here next Monday night for the public hearing to go over what the anticipated, what they're projecting for what the rate environment is and what that should mean for debt repayment. But this is this one, the 10 million, well, the 7.8 million that's listed here, but the full $10 million bond issue, we've already built, or it's built into our next year's debt service levy, making the first principal and interest payment on that. And we have adequate room built in to accommodate that payment. And we've built all of the projections with the idea on the bond issues to make sure that we can stay right at the debt service levy that we've had over the last few years and continue to have in the future.
That's good.
Thank
Number
you.
4.
Thank you, Jim.
Public hearing consideration of an ordinance amending section 170.75 signs of chapter 170 zoning code of the Burlington Municipal Code. It's going to be the first reading on this one. Mr. Tisdale.
This was a request by business on Roosevelt Avenue, Great River Entertainment, with Casino Fun City, as well as the city center site, to look at our sign code and consider some changes to it. Did request a change in the size of signs allowed as well as the height of signs allowed. This went to the Planning Commission on December 20th, and the Planning Commission recommended approval 4-0 of the amendments as shown in the ordinance. Staff did a review as well and did recommend increasing the maximum allowable height of freestanding signs for common freestanding signs shared by 2 or more tenants. Did not recommend increasing the height of the sign. The amendments were approved by the Planning Commission based on the request of the applicant and the lack of guidance or inclusion in the comprehensive plan related to signage. In the current comprehensive plan, there's no section that talked about signage. It wasn't a topic that got brought up as a concern or was discussed in there, so there's no guidance for them on that. And they made their recommendation based on no inclusion in the plan. In the previous plan, 15 years ago, there was a section that talked about reducing the height on Roosevelt and reducing the size, but it wasn't brought up as a topic in the current comprehensive plan. The 2 changes that were recommended approval by the Planning Commission, one being freestanding signs shared by 2 or more separate businesses shall be allowed to be up to 60 feet in height, provided the sign is a monument sign, includes a landscaped area surrounding the base of the sign. Currently, the maximum height of any sign in Burlington along Roosevelt is 50 feet in height, and this would change that height requirement only for businesses that had 2 or more businesses on the site. So if they had multiple businesses, they'd be allowed 60 feet. If one business right next door would only be allowed 50 feet. One of the concerns was trees on Roosevelt, landscaping, and being able to see the signs. Whether you're able to see them at 60 or if that needs to be changed in a few years, that was one concern about changing the code, is trees will continue to grow. Are we going to look at this every few years? And also, are businesses that only have 1 tenant on site not allowed to, based on this, wouldn't be allowed that same 60-foot height? So that was a concern as well.
So is that like where Dick's Sporting Goods and that
Yep.
group?
Yeah, their current sign's 50 feet, but they could go to 60 feet. Next door, if it's just a single tenant user, Perkins, they could only go to 50 feet. So I guess the basis, if it being visible above the trees, why is one over the other?
Yeah.
And then are we looking at this comprehensively? We haven't had any complaints from anyone else, but also with trees continuing to grow, is this an issue that we need to maybe look at a little bit more? So those are some of the concerns raised by staff, but it was recommended by the Planning Commission. The second one was increasing the pole sign size for 2 or more businesses up to 50% larger on Roosevelt, up to 375 square feet. So if you have multiple tenants, the thought there is you may need more signage to advertise for both tenants, which staff did recommend approval of. So those are the 2 changes being brought forward. Do you have any questions on those?
Good? All right. Thank you, Mr. Tisland. Number 5 is a resolution approving the preliminary plat of Deer Point Estates subdivision.
This is the area that was just recently went through the annexation process. I'll show a map up here. Located south of Kestner, between 14th and Summer Street. Again, the area in yellow is the area that just went through the annexation process. Looking at doing a 34-lot subdivision with initial street connection off Kestner Street down 14th Street, and then a second access point coming out to Summer Street on the south side. There is an easement specifically for public right-of-way and street connecting on this property here, but as shown, it is 34 lots. And again, this preliminary plat went through the Planning Commission on January 17th, and they recommended 4-0 with 1 abstain for approval of the subdivision. With that, Ryan, the developer, is here as well.
Yep. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Thanks for your guys' time again. I'll be short and sweet tonight. There's a lot of folks here I know that are looking for other things on the agenda tonight. So again, my name's Ryan Nagrocki with Midwest Realty Group. So as Eric kind of pointed out, the Deer Point Estates, it's a 34-lot subdivision that I'm looking at putting in town. On the west side, Summer Street. To the north would be Kestner Street, and then South 14th on the east side with the infamous water tower out by the airport there on the northeast corner. Just today, here looking to see if you guys have any questions in regards to approval of the preliminary plat. Met with Planning Commission there, and so I guess I'll just open it up for questions at this point.
Any questions for Ryan?
We've been through this a couple, 3 times,
Yep.
so I'm good with it.
I like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wore your fancy tie, and we're not even
Yeah,
asking you
right?
questions tonight, man. Well, put it away and save it for another day. I think we're good. Thank you, sir,
guys.
for coming down. Appreciate that.
Eric, are there going to be some contingencies on this subdivision?
There would, not on the preliminary plat, on the final plat, Ryan had talked about coming forward with possible 2 phases, and based on that,
Yeah, so
where
right now,
that would fall into place, and then requirements for maybe a bond or letter of credit to make sure we have 2 access points here, but that would be with the final plat, but Ryan could talk about that.
yeah, so right now I'm looking at phasing it in two steps. So I would come down South 14th on the northern street all the way west to where lots 4 and 24. And then I would put in so-called like either a hammerhead for turnaround for fire access, and then post a letter of credit or a performance bond to guarantee the access then would go down and back out to Summer Street. Right now, actually, it is my plan, talking with a gentleman, that I probably will go ahead and put that access point on 14th and Summer Street from the get-go. That there's some cost savings from bonding and such on my end that I will probably do that right away. But
And with this development, you're going to eventually be looking for TIF rebate?
yeah, that will be a request once this gets approved or considered. I will then be coming in front of you, the council, requesting a TIF rebate program. So a little bit different than what's been done in the past, but I still would then take on all that risk up front and then get rebated over time. The development costs right now are pretty prohibitive to the price point of homes I'm trying to meet in the subdivision. I'm trying to meet a price point of 180 to 275, and right now the development cost on it, I think I sent to Charlie and Eric the other day, you know, my per lot cost after I had some things revisited, you know, I'm looking at it upwards of $38,000 to $40,000 development costs on a per lot. So to encourage that housing in that 180 to 275 is kind of difficult without that.
So as this moves through the process, even after a preliminary plat is done, there will be that request, and the housing development likely, I think from the developer has communicated almost, 100% likely that that will not be moved forward without the TIF rebate is
Correct.
ultimately
Yep.
being approved as part of the process.
Any other questions for Ryan?
Not I.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, Ryan, who picked out the tie, you or your wife? Don't answer that, I don't want you to start lying. All right.
You like it or no?
Yeah, I like it, it's nice. Okay. Next, we have a resolution approving installation of a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Jefferson Street and 7th. Mr. McGregor.
I lost my map somewhere between Public Works and here. Apologize. This resolution would approve a four-way stop sign at the intersection of 7th and Jefferson. Currently, it is a two-way stop for north and southbound traffic. This resolution would install stop signs for east and westbound. Engineering used the MUTC warrant guideline. It did not trip as a warranted stop sign, but the one thing that it does not take into consideration is high flows of pedestrian traffic. Ultimately, without it tripping warrants, I can't really bring it here recommending that it be installed, but would like you to take consideration of it. I think for consistency's sake of downtown, it makes sense. And any
I
other
agree.
questions on that?
That's the only intersection on Jefferson that doesn't.
Correct.
Yeah,
It is the only non-four-way controlled
Right.
intersection between there and 8th.
I don't see why we wouldn't do it, actually.
Makes sense to me.
Yours good?
I'm good.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we have number 2, a resolution to establish a new fee schedule for park shelter reservations.
This is something we evaluate on an annual basis. We last adjusted the fees in 2015. We are looking to go to an online, web-based reservation system, and I guess moving to this fee in accordance with that as well. But looking at a change from generally overall $16 to $20 for half-days, $27 to $35 for full days for the smaller sites, and then $27 to $35 and $43 to $60 for all day for some of the larger sites. But this is something we continually evaluate, looking at some other comparable communities where this increase will put us in line with what they are charging. It is something we try and continue to update some of our facilities as well, and there is cost in doing that. We are updating some of the indoor shelters right now, but some of the outdoor ones with tuck pointing and sidewalks are needed as well. So we keep that in mind when we're evaluating fees, but also looking at Ryan Gorley, our park superintendent, looked at Mason City, Fort Dodge, Marshalltown, Dubuque, Tummo, and Clinton, and found we're very comparable in cost to those as well, so with the change. So we'd recommend approval to move to this in accordance with going to online reservation as well.
Okay.
Council, any questions? You guys good?
Okay.
Number 3, resolution to establish a new fee and charge schedule at Burlington Recplex. Mr. Tisdale.
This looks at a couple of fees, the league fees for softball, soccer, and volleyball, increasing the fees 25 per season from $275 to $300, increasing adult co-ed volleyball 25 from $225 to $250 for officiated leagues, and $125 to $150 for unofficiated leagues, increasing the adult soccer team fee $25 from $425 to $450 per team, and then maintenance fees, increasing the softball, baseball tournament maintenance fee from $25 per team to $30 per team. Looking at this, the estimated revenue from Kirk was approximately $5,500 that he felt this would increase in fees at the Recplex. Again, this is something we evaluate on an annual basis. We did some other fee increases before last season, and try and make sure we're looking at our costs and realize there are some costs that we're not covering, but also just trying to be comparable to other facilities as well. So.
Appreciate that. It's a little reminder to us that every investment that you make prices just keep rising as time goes. You gotta think about those things. Okay, number 4, resolution amending fees for Dankworth Park Pool.
This was last adjusted before the 2015 season. Have made some improvements to the pool since that time, but also continually evaluate the fees and looking at comparable communities as well. Looking at a 25-cent increase for youth and adult for daily admission, a $5 increase for season pass, and increasing the rental rate, $5 for groups 0 to 30 and $10 for rental of the pool for groups 31 in admission and over. So hopefully a minor increase, but something we continue to look at as well. And we did not raise rates last year when we put the liner in, but it was 2 seasons ago that we last looked at rates.
A family that used to live in my old neighborhood, they went out, and I won't say where they went, but they took 3 kids out for an evening, and they said, man, we went through $225 just like that. Just throwing that out there, just that makes something like this stands out, where a family can get a membership for up to 5 family members for $145 for the whole season. You can swim for a whole $145. You can go back. They'll let you come back the next day.
No, that's $135. That's $10 for each additional, for families like mine.
That's why he can't afford to go swimming. They've got a bathtub, though. We're going to put you on a meter. Put you on a meter.
Do you want to let these guys talk while we're talking about the food?
Sure, why not? Yeah, come on.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
I was going to make you wait till the end, but Jim's a sweetheart, man. I'm mean that way.
We aren't even asking you any money.
Oh, man, come on. You guys help yourself. Have at it.
You better introduce and tell you what we're talking about here so
Okay.
people know what's going on.
So what the situation is, we've been looking.
Could you introduce yourselves too,
Okay,
please?
I'm sorry. I'm Ryan Ritter.
John Freeling, that's Michelle Abu-Wasley. She should be talking, but she's.
And
Thank you.
But Michelle and I came and talked to you a while ago about putting a structure over the top of Dankworth Pool. And so we've been working on both the ongoing expenses and the initial cost of putting the structure up. And most of the information that you've got there relates to the ongoing cost. And we think we've got it to the point where there really wouldn't be any added expenditure by the city to maintain the pool year-round, rather than just the 3 months that you're doing it now.
Oh, great.
But we've got some other things we've got to figure out, like how to pay for the structure in the first place, so.
Thank you.
But we thought we kind of owed you an update as to where we were on this, because we have talked about it, and we were thinking that we were going to want to be a part of this budget cycle, but we think at this point, we're not prepared to ask for that.
Right.
So this is kind of probably more of a preliminary conversation for next year than this year. So
Good.
that's kind of where we are.
Good.
And if you want, if it's easier to just ask questions, that's fine.
we can go through this if you want to. I don't know what you want to do time-wise.
We got a pretty busy night, so I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
you gotta
let's
have
go
to
through
count
it right now.
yourself.
But
If it's easier to do this some other way, that's fine too, so.
I was just hoping, just to, at least for the people that are watching, maybe they haven't seen, just so that they're familiar with what the project
So
is.
what we're looking at doing is, we've seen, over the last 3 years, we're losing kids traveling from Burlington up to Iowa City, down to Quincy, and all these different directions because we don't have a USA swim team local. So these kids are spending 3 hours a night plus another 2 hours of practice, 3 hours traveling plus another 2 hours of practice just to swim year round. And so what we were looking for and we've been exploring is how to create a USA swim team in Burlington. And then what it came to was we invited a couple coaches from these different teams down to look at it. And to our surprise, in our first meeting with one of the biggest teams out of Cedar Rapids, she told us we're sitting on a gold mine in the Dankworth Pool, which is complete opposite of what we've always been told. We've kind of looked at Dankworth as more of a debt than something that we can.
It's a gold mine.
Yeah. So what she came through and she she is from the Washington State area, and she said, we bubble things all the time here. We have to. It's not too bad. You can make it work with that. So we have prices for an initial bubble, what that will be, but that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is to say, if we can prove that this is going to not cost the city any more money, and in fact, the city might not have to reimburse as much money as what they originally do to the pool, we would want to see if it was possible, if everything goes in the right path, that we could lease the pool for either 9 or 12 months, depending on how city council wants to do it. Eventually throwing a bubble over the pool, and the numbers there show that they're proving that it can work. And these are coming from 2 USA teams already in existence, one in Quincy, one in Cedar Rapids. We went low numbers across the board, and it still comes out to a $50,000 profit before you throw the revenue of what's going on in there. So I think it's possible to make work. Is it gonna happen year one? It might be a little bit of a stretch for year one to say that you're gonna get $100,000 in swim lessons. But $100,000 in swim lessons, the one down in Quincy said that he projects it at $110,000, and the one in Cedar Rapids said she projects it at $140,000. I plugged in 100 because
How long's
I wasn't comfortable.
How long's the Quincy one been?
Years, many years,
Yeah.
20, 30 years. Well, it was built in the 80s, so.
It's actually Sheridan Swim Club is what it is. That, if you want to know which one it is, it's Sheridan Swim Club. They have another facility there. These
It's
aren't
a privately
bubbled,
owned.
these aren't bubbled facilities. These are just
Freestanding.
USA facilities that are, USA teams that are renting other facilities. So, that's why, and then on that last page that has the bubble cost, that's where we're getting a lot of our expenses, is we went to 3 different bubbles and figure out what they actually cost to run. What is it taking to run those for the year while they're up?
In similar climate.
In similar climates, and so we got that, then we threw in the current cost to run the pool, which those are probably overlapping a little bit, where you might actually be a little lower, but we threw that in, and then we calculated out the other months of water and sewer and electric and all that, and I'm as surprised as it works. It does. They guaranteed me it would work. I was very skeptical. It works. So, we aren't at a point right now where we can say we want to start this right now. But we are at a point where we need to say, is the city on board if we pursue this? Because before we can go start getting funding for the bubble, or before we can seriously talk to a coach about hiring him to move to Burlington, we got to know that the city is on board with it, because he can't leave, or they can't leave their current position to come here if he doesn't know the city's gonna be on board with it. So that's where we're at right now.
Does this factor in what it costs maybe to upgrade the bathhouse?
So
We put some cost in for that. It's not significant to start, if it was, it can be done fairly at a pretty minimal cost to start with, and then you can, make it a little bit fancier. And at some point, the pool house may need some upgrades, but just depending on being used year round, and different than it is now, but.
I would say at the bottom of that expense for the bubble page, on the bottom left corner there, it kind of breaks down how much the bubble is gonna cost. Well, the bubble cost was 300 and some thousand. Well, we're projecting 500,000 to get it out.
Because there are other costs beyond just the structure, so.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
What impact, if any, then does this have on the summer months? As far
It'd be
as
taken back down for the summer.
you Take it down,
Yeah.
and then the public,
It'd be just like it is now in the summer.
just like it is now.
Yeah, so we are, that is the 9 or 12 month. It is up to the city. Do they
Can I
still
get
want
another
to?
page with the bubble on there, do you have another one of those?
It is up to the city whether they want to lease it for 9 months or they want to lease it for 12 months.
Thank you.
If we lease it for 12 months, our head coach that we're going to hire in would be the one working with the city to completely facilitate how are we gonna run programming for it, how are we gonna do all that. Part of the agreement on this, the way this works, is obviously that learn to swim number is very high.
Yeah.
they can make a lot more on swim lessons than what we're currently making on swim lessons. And that is a realistic number. That isn't charging any more than what current places around here are charging, or other places in the area are charging. That is a realistic number that can happen. So, but that would be us taking over all swim lessons, so it would take swim lessons off the city too. So, and that would affect the summer months. We would just run the lessons.
I think you said before too that our current pool is unique extent as far as what, the length of the pool?
50 meters.
50-meter pool. Those are, a heated 50-meter pool is extremely hard to find. They are fighting for them in Cedar Rapids right now. I mean, they have 5 teams fighting for one pool up there, and who can outbid the other one. A heated 50-meter pool is very hard to find.
We can utilize an asset that we already have. That excites me. So, just from me, from this chair, I'm all about it.
You talked earlier about how can we get more kids involved, and this is a way to get more kids involved without costing the city too much. I mean, at most, we're looking at costing the city the same that it is currently losing on the pool. That would be the most initial cost. And possibly if we can get a little help, either putting up or taking down the bubble. That city has some probably resources that if we don't have to go rent something to do this, is it a possibility that the city could help with putting up and taking down when it goes up and down? But
And it would also be bringing in kids from other areas, not just Burlington.
I know.
So, I mean, currently, I just look at the high school this year, or the last few years has opened up the swim team to the surrounding schools. It started with only 2 schools, and this year they're up to 5 schools participating in our competing with BHS. That increased the numbers, and they've had a very successful season. So, you know, there are kids in surrounding areas that want to swim. We have one on the high school team coming all the way every day from Central Lee to practice to swim for BHS. You know, I mean, so they are coming from a wide area, and this would include even a broader area, and from Illinois as well.
Well done. Well done. You guys have any other questions for them? Because
Oh, I like the sound.
Keep working on it. Keep working on it.
Yes.
Just keep in touch with staff and.
Yeah,
please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
this
We will.
fits in with your comment about outsourcing and,
Absolutely.
yeah,
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for
Thank
coming
you.
down.
thank you.
No problem. I was gonna make Freeling wait longer, but all right.
Could Steamboat Days go next? Is that okay? Sorry, they have another meeting. So.
You bet.
Another Steamboat Days related meeting, sorry.
I was gonna make you guys wait longer till the end, but since Steph strong-armed me.
Well, I'm Amy Burkhardt on behalf of Burlington Steamboat Days, and Stephanie Kozleski is with us here tonight too. We are the president and president-elect of Burlington Steamboat Days. And we're here tonight because we're trying to finalize the contract between the city and Burlington Steamboat Days for the 2017 festival year. We've been working actively with staff to try to make that happen. You may recall from last year, we made some concessions in terms of the number of city staff hours that we utilized to set up our festival, and that's carrying over into our 2017 contract. And we've also worked and made some concessions in terms of some things that were brought forth as security concerns regarding closing our carnival earlier, and we've agreed to do that. You know, we want to be a partner to the city, and this is your festival. So we want to be in agreement on these things, but kind of where our sticking point is just on the amount of money that's contractually obligated to flow from Burlington Steamboat Days to the city of Burlington for the use of city property during the festival. So we're here to ask for a decrease in that. And just before we do that, Stephanie passed out some information, and we just wanted to share a little bit about the economic impact of Burlington Steamboat Days. We did have a formal study conducted in 2013 event year by the University of Northern Iowa, and we found that it's $1.7 million that flows to our economy here each year during that festival. And that's not just money being spent on the Burlington Steamboat Days grounds. So as you see there, you know, it averaged $130 per festival attendee that's being spent in our community, resulting in $300,000 being spent at our restaurants and taverns and so forth, $214,000 in hotels, $116,000 in the stuff people buy while they're here, clothing and gifts, etc., and even $80,000 at our gas station and on taxis and that kind of thing. So in addition to that, over $40,000 is contributed from Burlington Steamboat Days to local organizations, groups, and individuals who either assist with our festival, so nonprofit groups that do our gate check, our bag check, scan our tickets, that we're contributing back money to those organizations to do that volunteer labor. Or we do have a scholarship program for students that are pursuing careers in music, so that's where that $40,000 figure comes from. So all told, $1.8 million. So we think it's a significant activity that happens in Burlington every year, and we are just in the position right now where we're kind of tightening our belt, and Stephanie's going to kind of talk to you about that.
So I'm the president this year, and as a local business owner, I have tried to take 30 volunteers and make them look at this as a business. And so I guess we did a survey in 2015, started looking at what are some things we can change about our event. We're seeing rising cost of entertainment, dwindling ticket sales. So we've really tried to refresh the event and tighten our belt. We've increased sponsorship funds from $50,000 up to $130,000 to help with some of these extra costs. We've changed the event from 6 nights to 4 nights, cut extra fat from the budget. We've asked each executive member of our board to go through their budget and cut anything out that can possibly be cut. So I guess coming to you as a partner for this event, what we would really like is to just look at kind of the history of how we've paid rent for this event. I guess it's my understanding, I've only lived in Burlington for 6 years, but my understanding is that in approximately 1999, the city contributed to the building of a stage down at the port. At that time, Burlington Steamboat Days started paying approximately $10,000 per year back to the city as repayment for that stage. Now, in around 2006, that stopped, and it became a $10,000 donation to the city. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, it's now been called rent. So I guess if we are going to label this rent, I'm coming to you, asking you to help us in my year of tightening our budget, and wondering if we could pay rent for the 4 days we actually utilize the downtown area, I mean, the parking lot, basically. We do utilize some of the auditorium services during that time. But what I'm really asking is for a 4-day rental cost for us to pay. And that would be at $1,000 per day, $4,000. So that is our pitch. I don't know if you have questions on the exact, where we came up with that number, why we're...
How did you come up with that number?
Well, what it really came down to was, again, we do utilize the grounds for several days leading up to the event, several days after. However, we're not actually using the auditorium, putting anything on down there, but for the 4 days of our event. So I guess we would ask that those other days kind of be the city's contribution to the event to keep this event going.
But, okay, can you give us the breakdown of what the city has contributed as far as, because last I knew we still have our city people that are doing the cleanup and all of that.
Stephanie Stuker provided, too many Stephanies.
Yes, too many Stephanies.
Provided you a sheet there that kind of goes through the numbers from the last couple of years of what we do.
Yeah, so right now in the contract that we're negotiating, we had increased the rent, I think 3%, up to like $11,000. Last year they paid $10,985. So on this recap, we just went back the 2 years. It shows how many hours our street and parks and property maintenance department spends down at Steamboat Days. We do, according to the contract, get reimbursed for the overtime. And you can see that in that column. So last year, for June 2016, we billed Steamboat Days $3,602.50, and they paid us. That was for the overtime. But as below, you can see the other expenses we incurred. We had to pay Service Master to clean the building. That was approximately $2,500. To totally put all the costs of our employees, overtime and regular rates, that was approximately another $11,000. So then they reimbursed us the $3,600 Again, sorry, the total was 14,000. They reimbursed the 3,600. And then our cost that we've contributed as a community to the event would be approximately $11,000. And then I just went down and looked at our rent. They do occupy the building for 14 days. Venue Works leaves the building. They vacate their liquor license. Then Steamboat Days expands their liquor license to include that whole area. And so we just did the 14 days, $2,000 per day is what $2,000 per day is what we charge someone else for that whole building, such as Civic Music. If they rent the whole building, they pay $2,000 per day. So that's where we get the rent of approximately $28,000. And so we have discounted that down to the 11,000 that we're suggesting in this contract. So, and then they're wanting it just to be discounted even more. So again, you can see 2015, they have reduced the time that our staff is there, which is great, and that's what we had negotiated in the contract too. So any questions on these numbers? Or?
Thank you, Steph.
Okay.
Council, what are your thoughts?
For us.
Still looking at the numbers.
Jim, do you have any,
Any wisdom? No.
I wasn't gonna say wisdom.
Thanks, I'm glad. You know, I think we've been able to come to an agreement in terms of, I don't think there was much different that we're looking at from last year to this year. The biggest concerns that we were trying to work through was how the carnival worked and the timing on some of that. And Steamboat Days has been very cooperative in working through trying to make that be successful and address just, I think, concerns from both sides that have been raised over having a good quality event and making sure that we're doing it in the way that's the most family-friendly and just a positive for us as we move forward. In regards to the contract amount, I mean, that's really a council decision, is what level of participation do you want to have to make the event be successful? You know, on an ongoing basis, you know, as we do our numbers, this fits within is incorporated within our overall budget, and as you think through the change, if you go to do a discounted rate, you're providing a benefit for Steamboat Days and increasing our participation there and showing that you recognize that it's a worthwhile event, but it does have that same consequent negative to the general fund. So just it's a matter of preference, really. We do discount our rates already. It's a matter of if you feel that this is something that we as a group should be increasing our participation in Steamboat Days and helping to make this event be successful over time. This is your call, but it does have an impact on our budget.
Stephanie, can you tell me again what it is currently and what you want it to be?
I believe in the proposed contract was a little over 11,000. Last year it was 10.5 approximately. We're not disputing, we do have an office in the auditorium that we rent, and we're not disputing the rent charge for that. This is just the overall event rental.
Right.
I guess just to touch on, he talked about the changes we made for kind of safety concerns at the carnival. In doing so, we had to contract with a new carnival. Our former carnival would not agree to the change in the times to close earlier, concerns with their revenue flow. So we are going to take a hit on what we'll be taking in from the carnival because we had to contract with a new group to make sure we could put on a carnival.
So you're asking the rent to be decreased down to what?
$6,000 more dollars?
Yes.
Now, tell me, what do you want it to be
4,000.
from?
Oh, you want it, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's more
Right
than
now,
that.
it's budgeted to be $11,315.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
what's
that's
in the
gonna be our
contract.
cut. Okay,
11,315 down to 4.
And sort of the thought process behind that. We're only able this year to make a one-year agreement. You know, we'd like to have this agreement be something that is multi-year. We aren't here every year, but with all the changes happening at the riverfront right now, we just don't feel like that's probably in either party's best interest until we see what that looks like and how we're able to operate moving forward. So looking at this as a more long-term strategy, I guess what I would really like to ask is, can we make it be that Burlington Steamboat Days pays $1,000 in rent for each festival day? And then that way we kind of have a starting basis of this conversation moving forward after. So for this year, that would make it $4,000. If we ever go back to a 6-day festival, it would make it be $6,000. But looking at this year's contract, that would be the $1,000 each festival day.
But like you say, that parking lot you use 2 or 3 days ahead of time, though, it's not usable by the public.
That is correct, yeah. And maybe it will, maybe it won't be in the future with the improvements, you know, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the case this year.
I just want to say that ever since I can remember, the city of Burlington, as far as I know, has always been a partner with Steamboat Days. Though I'm not interested in the rides anymore, I was born and raised here. I can't imagine Burlington without Steamboat Days down the riverfront. We definitely want to continue that partnership, being responsible as well, and looking at how we treat everybody else. We need to try to find that happy place. But for this year, I would be fine with meeting that need for 2017.
You'd be fine with what?
I would be fine with meeting their request.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Council?
Do you need to bring that forward in a resolution?
We'd have a approval of the contract one way or another, and it would be by resolution. Really,
But I mean, are you guys okay with them with this going forward?
Could we meet somewhere in the middle? I mean, I know it's not ideal for you guys, but that would be a huge, not that that's not a lot of money but.
We've already made a huge concession in the rental fee from what we would be charging others if they were, had wanted to rent that facility at that time, so. I'm comfortable with the contract as was presented from Stephanie.
I have no feeling one way or the other.
Well, I think we could cut it a little bit as a one-year contract. I mean,
What are you thinking, Bob?
we have a franchise fee, we can, that's a joke.
That was nice, actually. It even caught me off guard. Went over my bald skull. Where are you at then, Bob? Are you just so we can give them direction? I mean,
I'd cut a couple $1,000 from last year on a one-year basis.
okay, so you're not comfortable as is. You could go either way. You said
Meet in the middle.
meet in the middle, so you're not comfortable with it, Mr. Scott.
I'm comfortable with it as it is. The contract was presented by Stephanie. 11,315.
That's the same, right?
So we've got, let me get this right here.
One of everything.
Apparently, we've got Tim that's satisfied with what, you're comfortable with what Jim is, with what staff has presented,
Yes.
which I think everybody is. Jim could go either way. You want some happy medium, you want some taken off. We're gonna have to, did you guys have any, have a plan B for if we said, nah?
It's questioning the longevity of the event. I mean, that's really where we are, is we're looking for partners at this point from everywhere in this community. And number one, I guess, would be the city of Burlington, seeing the value that's added by having this event. So
I know you have a lot of people with a lot of interest in
partners.
this year's
We're in. We're
budget,
just
and
trying to
we
come
are
up with the amount.
partners,
We're
we are
partners.
partners.
We're
And
in.
please know that you are not our first line of coming with a handout. You know, as Stephanie mentioned, you know, we've increased corporate sponsorship dollars, bringing in national corporate sponsors from outside the community, increased that flow of income to the event from 50 to 130,000. You know, we've been working this hard for the last 2 years, but we needed to do due diligence for our board to say that we have asked in every corner that we can to help tighten the budget. And you know, this is just kind of where we are, and as Stephanie said, it's our goal to keep this as Burlington's signature event moving forward for years to come. But the reality of the situation is, without really getting things tightened down, you know, we don't have lots and lots of years left. So we really are in the position where we're asking you to help sustain this and be able for us to, years to come and say, here's a $1.8 million economic impact happening in your community.
Our community.
Yeah.
That's right.
This is the same night that you're talking about reducing funding to the library by $50,000 a year. So you have to keep that in context as you make these decisions. And you're talking about how do you offset adding staff. As you talk about that, the part of the discussion will also be is when you're trying to get to what will it cost to add that additional position, along with talking about cuts in some of those other areas, and where does that leave you ultimately with a property tax increase? This gets figured in as where does that leave you in as part of that property tax increase, which isn't a bad discussion to have. It's just you do need to understand that that's part of that overall discussion.
Well, I don't believe in bowing down before Almighty Steamboat Days, but I like the event. I know a lot of hard work goes into it, and I like it down the riverfront. And I personally, I just want to, we are or we're not, but I personally, I'm not going to bark or argue over that type of money for next year.
I could go with Councilwoman Wilson and go maybe 8.
Yeah,
Would you like to see it presented at 8,000?
yeah.
Yes.
We can bring the contract forward for next week with it at the 8,000 in it.
Are you guys more
Is that
comfortable with a compromise, apparently?
I don't know what those two ladies are.
They'd like more.
It's the 2,000
That's
a
the
day.
2,000 a day that you're charging other organizations at this point.
Yeah.
I think that seems like a good compromise. I'd also have to take it to my board, but
Just remember all the extras
But I
that we
think
do
that's-
for
yes,
Steamboat
yes.
Days. I mean, it
Yeah, I think
has
that's
been a
very
partnership,
fair.
so let's
If we-
continue with that and
If we hear back from them by next week that it's, or actually by Thursday, that it's okay, we'll have it on for next agenda. Otherwise, they'll just wait till the following agenda.
okay. All right. Thank you.
thank you for
Thank
all
you
all
for
your
your
hard
time.
work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to the proposed consent agenda, number 5. Have a resolution approving an agreement between the City of Burlington and Iowa Department of Natural Resources for amendment number 4 to the administrative consent order item number 9 to eliminate combined sewer overflows, CSOC, in the Cascade Sewer Basin. Nick?
This resolution will approve an amendment to the consent decree that we have to, the deadline was December 31st, 2016. We're currently in construction with the separation of the Cascade Basin. The extension would give us till May 31st. That should be plenty of time. We were going right up until December until the weather kind of pushed us out. So as soon as we get a break, we should be able to get back to it. So.
Good deal. Okay, we have some public hearings set for February 21st. First is a consideration of a sale of property locally known as 1722 Dodge Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. It's a fantastic property. Mr. Tisland, anything?
No, discuss more at the next work session, but abandoned property we acquired.
It's phenomenal property. Somebody else jump on that one. B is a consideration of a sale of property locally known as 2500 Summer Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Anything on that, Mr. Tisland?
This is transferring the Armory property to the Airport Authority.
And then number C is a consideration of an ordinance vacating and selling a portion of Ganon Street right-of-way located south of Iowa Street and a portion of Whitaker Street right-of-way located west of Osborne Street. Anything on that?
Nothing at this time.
I was just asking a question. You don't have to get an attitude. See how he gets. And then number Letter D, consideration of an ordinance prohibiting the construction of wells within the city limits for use of a portable water source, it says potable water source. Mr. McGregor.
This is something that has come forward from the monitoring site that they have at the BP store on, gosh, I forgot the address.
South.
Right by the school. Gosh, I'm
South.
sorry.
South.
Great description up here tonight.
South
Which
and
school?
South and Ninth.
I believe it's Grimes School,
South
catty
and
corner
Ninth.
from there.
Yeah.
I apologize. You'll have a detailed map and everything in front of you when
He's only
I.
been here for 3 weeks. It's
Only-
all right, you'll catch on.
They have a monitoring site, and this ordinance would allow for them to pick up and move because the monitoring site has reached a certain level via the DNR. They need language that says that no potable wells or non-potable wells are allowed to be put in that area. Currently, they are underneath this current ordinance. I talked with the waterworks manager, and he's okay with this.
You guys good?
Yep.
All right. Then is consideration of voluntary severance of territory. We'll deal with that. Anything you want to say on that?
Cabin off of Tama Road, the only cabin in the city limits that doesn't receive city services.
Okay.
Asked to sever.
Okay, discussion items, treasurer's report. Annette?
You have December's treasurer's report in front of you, and, I mean, there's nothing that jumps out as unusual or unordinary. It's kind of going along, everything's kind of, if you look at the revenues and expenditures, in line with where we think we should be.
Nothing stands out? You're not excited about anything, Annette?
Well, yeah, I'm glad there's nothing that stands out.
That's right. That's right. That's something to be excited about.
Yeah.
She gets excited about numbers. So,
Okay. Council, do you guys have anything?
I don't.
I would point out, you do have two projects that, well, a few projects that have deficits. The Division Street Division Street Rise project has a $190,000 deficit. That's one that we're doing the borrowing for, TIF funds to cover our local match on that. Until that project gets closed out, we'll probably still see a few
Right.
negatives between reimbursements from DOT and whenever we get timing on the funds from TIF to cover our portion too. Flood mitigation is running $160,000 deficit. We have received no payments yet. The first quarterly estimate is sometime in February. I think February 10 is where they announce what the number is
Correct, so
supposed to
hopefully by
be.
the end of February, we should have it by the end of February.
But that gives you an idea how far behind that runs. The costs that you see in here are all engineering fees. Some of those may be wrapped up into the borrowing amount, and that's one that we'll still have to have a discussion as we move forward into the actual project phase. And it seemed like there was, community development has $633,000 deficit. That is former Dresser Rand site cleanup that will ultimately be reimbursed from TIF as well. We have not had project closeout on that, so when we get through project closeout, our goal would be by the end of the year to do the transfer over to cover that, the final actual cost of that, to zero this out during this fiscal year.
Good deal.
All right, thanks.
Anything else for Annette? Okay, thank you, Annette. Number 2, we have comprehensive annual financial report, Anderson Larkins.
Oh, I'm Brad Barnes with Anderson Larkin, CPA in Ottumwa. Do you guys have the report in front of you? Okay. And do you guys also have this letter? Excellent, okay. The letter that you see, this is just our standard required disclosure letter to you. And here we would describe if there are any disagreements with management or any findings or issues. So we're happy to report that there was no such findings. I also wanted to mention on page 1 here, we do touch a little bit on estimates, the fact that estimates are embedded within the financial statements. And we do recognize that depreciation is the most significant estimate within the financial statements. So move on to the actual financial statements, page 17. I just wanted to briefly touch on, here we talk about management's responsibilities and auditors' responsibilities. Manager is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. Also includes the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control. And our job as the auditors are to express opinion on financial statements. Next page. Our opinion paragraph here, what this describes is an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. So that's the best type of opinion you can get. So, good job. Page 23, I'm going to use the management's discussion analysis part of it to just kind of briefly go over some of the figures. This report is full of the detail backup of those figures. This is just a brief summary. It's nice because it gives a comparison between last year and this year. Total assets, 125 million versus 129 million this year. That's a $3.3 million increase. 2 million of that had to do with increase in cash, and 1.3 million of that had to do with increase in capital assets. Total liabilities between the 2 years, 72 million last year versus 69.7 million this year. That's a decrease of 2.6 million due to just paying down on debt. And total net position or equity, 37.7 million last year versus 45.9 million this year. So that's an $8.1 million increase. On page 24, this is where we talk about revenue and expenses. It gives kind of the breakdown. Total revenue last year was 38.8 million versus 42.7 million this year, so that's a $3.8 million increase. Total expenses remained approximately the same, 34.9 versus 34.6 million this year. And that's where we get to the $8.1 million increase this year. Page 29, there's just a couple of notes where it talks about capital assets and debt. So I just wanted to point out, this is net of accumulated depreciation, but 89.5 million in capital assets versus 90.8 this year. That's net of depreciation expense this year was 4.3 million. And then total debt, 54.8 million versus 50 this year. So that's a $5 million decrease in paying down on debt. And on page 145, I'll jump to. Again, I wanted to touch base that we do look at internal control, and here we describe what deficiencies are in internal control and what a significant deficiency and material weakness is. Last paragraph from the bottom, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control. Last paragraph, we do touch a little bit on compliance, and very last sentence says that we did find 2 immaterial items of non-compliance. I'll touch on that here in just a second. Page 147. Here we talk a little bit about internal control and compliance related to federal programs. And here again, we describe that we did not have any findings related to compliance or internal control related to federal programs. And then on page 152, here's the summary of the audit itself. We kind of touched briefly on most of these already on page 152. But page 153 is where the two findings I were talking about, they are material items. So not a huge deal, but they're worth merit of pointing out. Item 4A16, certified budget. If you flip to page 85, you will see that you were over budget in the culture and recreation function by about $77,000 for the year. And then item 4G, there were, and if you look at note 10 on page 75, there were several funds that actually had a negative equity involved. And that's pretty much it. I wanted to also thank Stephanie and Annette for the good job that they do. Putting this report together is very difficult and cumbersome, and they do a very good job with that. So I appreciate their efforts on that.
Thank you for acknowledging them, because we think they do well, too.
It's good.
So, thank you. Thank you, Brad.
You bet.
Thank you.
Any questions?
The bottom line of that long report is that we're in pretty good shape.
You're in good shape. Excellent. You could probably give the Steamboat Days like $2,000 probably or so.
Did you get to start no trouble down here now?
Unsolicited.
Anything else, you guys?
Not for me.
Thank you much. We appreciate you.
Good going. Good going, Brad. See, accountants do have some.
A few of them do.
Yeah.
A few of them. Okay. Mary Beard, come on down. Airport year-end report and budget.
Well, good evening. Mary Beard, Southeast Iowa Regional Airport Authority Director. Thanks for having us tonight. I just want to go briefly over our annual report that we put together for the cities and the Des Moines County. So we've got a little PDF file here, and I think that's what you all have in front of you as well. But I just want to show some pictures of the airport and really what, we've got a fabulous airport, and there's a lot of activity that takes place out there every year that people aren't aware of. So those are some of the highlights of the airport. Next page, please, Eric. And this, the top map here shows our general aviation destinations. So general aviation would be corporations, private pilots that fly in and out of Burlington. And that really represents the areas in the U.S. where they fly to. So you can see it's all the way down to Florida, out to Arizona, up north, New York City. So our airport is utilized by many people within the United States. Our monthly operations in 2016 were actually up 1% over 2015. So we have general aviation operations, we count those at 1,544. That's our corporate, that's our private pilots that's come in and goes from Burlington. Commercial aviation operations, that's our airline, Air Choice One. So they had 2,654 operations in 2016. So that's a total of 4,198 operations. The next page, then we talk about the commercial air service we have, which is with Air Choice One. And we have daily flights now, Chicago, St. Louis, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. So that was new in November 2016. It's really important to know that that flight to Minneapolis is on Air Choice One. It is a non-subsidized flight. So they are committed to our community and providing air service for us. We are very, very fortunate to have the three locations where we fly to. So great partners to have. That being said, the air service contract expires in January of 2018. So we'll go through that process again this fall. We'll be talking to airlines, and that 2 years comes up very quickly, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So few more, maybe probably about the same number of airlines who would propose service for us. We would anticipate Air Choice One to re-up their contract. The exciting news with Air Choice One is they are contemplating or are in the process of ordering getting a Beechcraft 1900 aircraft into their fleet mix, which that's a 19-passenger aircraft, bigger than the 9-passenger that we currently have. Fourth quarter of 2017 is the anticipation date for that. That's not to say that that will fly in and out of Burlington. It could be anywhere in their route, but they're starting to add some larger aircraft. Along with that, our airport in Burlington, we would be required to get our Part 139 certification. That is the process that we would go through with the FAA. It requires, of course, the aircraft rescue and firefighting services that you provide. We just have to make sure those are compliant with this Part 139. We do operate our airport as if it were Part 139. There's some more inspection requirements, some more training requirements. So paint is probably a big thing. There could be some additional cost. The Airport Authority Board will be looking at that throughout the summer to see if that's something that we need to do. So the good news there is 13,063 passengers were served in 2016. Good news, I said, but that was really a 2% decrease from 2015. I would contribute a lot of that perhaps to the fertilizer plant and the travel that those folks did, families coming in and out of Burlington quite a bit. So we did see a little bit of an increase. We're hoping with the Minneapolis-St. Paul flights, we will see that come back up this year. Those are new passengers, is what we've noticed in the last 2 months. So it's not people that are not flying to St. Louis or not flying to Chicago. It's actually new passengers. So that's pretty exciting for us. Essential Air Service reauthorization bill is now through fiscal year 2017. Again, they will be tightening eligibility requirements, so that's something we always keep our eye on. The one that's the most important for us is the $200 per passenger subsidy cap, and currently we're at $179, so we're doing fine in that area. 2017 airport projects slated. We'll have a pretty busy summer at the airport. Annually, the Iowa Department of Transportation contributes $35,000 for marketing of our air service. So when you hear the radio ads or see the newspaper ads, that's money that the US or the Iowa DOT provides for us. We come up with a 20% match on that. We will be completing our hangar reconstruction project that started after 2013 when the storm came through and blew down our hangar. So we'll have one more hangar to be built this summer, and we'll start some terminal remodeling as well. Airfield ramp lighting was completed. We got some new LED lights on the ramps. We're pretty excited for that. We need to replace a regulator and our airport beacon. That's just equipment that's just outdated, needs to be updated, seen its life. So in 2017, Iowa Department of Transportation is contributing $494,000 worth of improvements to the airport, with a cost to us at $14,500. So it's a pretty big investment from the state of Iowa into the airport. The next page, we'll talk about the federal aviation investment in the airport. So we'll be doing runway 2030 enhancements. That's the end up by the fire stations. That's $320,000 worth of improvements. Our contribution is a 10% match of that. And then we'll be doing a construction project of the apron this summer. That's $1 million project. Totaling $1,350,000 with the airport match of $135,000. So local projects, on top of that, is that we did purchase a piece of property that was in our runway 30 runway protection zone. So that was about $150,000 when that's all said and done. Total airport infrastructure improvements for 2017 is right at $2 million. So there's a lot of activity going on at the airport. Industry trends, things that we watch in the industry, the decrease in airlines that are serving the essential air service market. Larger aircraft, less frequency, that's going to be a big deal. You'll see the Moline, the Cedar Rapids, the Peoria probably decreasing their number of trips. They're going to Chicago because they'll be getting larger aircraft. The smaller aircraft are just not being produced anymore. So that'll be an interesting trend to watch. Pilot shortage, there's always, this is probably about the 4th year we've talked about pilot shortage. Air Choice One, actually their pilots stay there for about 18 months and then they move on to a bigger carrier. So
what's with the pilot shortage? Why is that going on?
It's very expensive to become a pilot.
Okay.
It used to be, well, a lot of pilots came out of the services and they're not producing those. Aging pilots, retiring, It's a combination of things. A&P mechanic shortage, so we fight people shortage as well in the aviation world, so. And then I briefly went over the operating budget for you and listed the estimated contributions for fiscal year 16-17. This year, 62% of the contributions will be used for operations, and 38% then is saved for the capital contributions. So then I broke down fiscal year 15-16 actual budget, how we ended up the year, and then 16-17 budget, where we are as of November, and then our proposed budget for 17-18. Then I listed out on our capital side of things all of the projects that were taking place this summer, so that we will actually need to spend funds on coming in and out. So we will have some capital expenditures in this summer. The final thing I'll get to is a future project funding request for runway 1836. So this is the project, this is that $10 million project that we've been talking to you about for several years. And we met with the FAA in October, and they said that we could do construction in one season. So construction in fiscal year 2020, as long as the federal funds are available. So that's really good news to us. We were going to spread that out over 2 summers. But it will be great to get that done in one summer. So after our meeting last December, that was kind of the breakdown of the contributions to be made. And I believe that's all budgeted. Then the last page, I think we have, that's our next 5-year capital improvement project. So budgeted again, $12,035,000 for total airport improvement projects in the next 5 years.
I like the 12,000 number, Mary.
That's not going to take you very far. And then I break down our contribution, the airports, the state, and the FAA, so you can see where we're going in the next 5 years. And I really want to say thank you to the city departments, the city streets department. They do some work for us every year according to our 2080 agreement, do a great job for us. The fire department's always there as well. It's their responsibility to provide that ARF service, and then the police department is out there when we need them as well. So I want to say thank you to those departments, and as well to the representatives from Burlington that sit on my board, because I really appreciate their help.
Yeah.
Questions for Mary?
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate you, and you're so much better looking than your husband. Okay. Next we have the Edwin and Gladys White Park improvements. Mr. Tisland.
Thank you, Chuck.
Just going to go over a brief presentation on some plans for the Edwin and Gladys White Memorial Park. This was in our budget in an out year. With our increase in allocation from Starker funds, it's something we're looking to move up, and we'll talk about the cost for it a little bit more. I did meet with the South Hill neighborhood, some representatives there, as well as Mr. Starling, on some of the plans and layout that we have proposed for the park, but want to give the council an update as well. So this is current conditions. You can see there's 2 separate basketball courts with the playground in the center. It's on the corner of Angular and 5th Street. Some images from the park is taken in winter, so it's not as attractive as it looks during the summer. But as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, there are some aged park playground equipment at the site. as well as on the lower left-hand corner, there's two entrances to the site, one with a very steep grade, and the basketball court in the lower right-hand corner as well as the upper right-hand corner. The initial goal of the Starker funds was to upgrade the playground area as seen in the upper left-hand corner of the site. And that's what the funds were allocated towards, was improving the playground facility. Looking at the site, we'd like to move forward with a larger project, just complete the park, do a upgrade to the park, and kind of move on from that into the next project instead of coming back kind of in a patchwork setting. So we're looking at a whole-scale overall improvement to the park area, including playground, playset, slides, swings, features, mulch and benches. Looking at a play field to replace one of the basketball courts, improve sidewalk and access, reseal and stripe the basketball court that's on the east side, improve the lighting, landscaping, as well as could include a shelter on the site. Right now, the estimated cost is around $100,000. Initially, we had $30,000 in Starker funds. We are proposing to move some of the Starker funds that were allocated for the Dankworth Park playground to this, just so that we can complete this. One thing we will do is to seek some outside funds that we don't push the Dankworth playground out too far. We'd like to keep as much as we can for the Dankworth playground, so we are going to seek outside funds to try and complete this as well, so that we can make improvements to Dankworth as well in the future. But right now, the estimated cost for the items listed there is approximately $100,000. This was one of the initial playground designs. A couple things with it. We wanted to try and keep some open sight lines. That was one of the concerns, was feeling of safety as well as vandalism in the park. So keeping open sight lines so that parents can see kids at all times, so you can see from the roadway. And so this is one of the initial designs. We have also looked at adding some other smaller site amenities to the playground as well, in addition to the larger play side and swing there. These are some of the other images from the same company of adding a slide. One of the swing sets that we've added to Crapo has been very popular. In the right there, showing a swing for an adult and their child. In the lower hand corner, a smaller swing that kids can use. So looking at a variety of playground amenities in a similar design with the open sight lines. This just shows a layout, how looking at the scale, how it would fit on the site. This one does not show the slide or some of the smaller ones, but the larger swing and the playground site. This is the proposal for the site. Looking at adding an open play field, currently there's 2 basketball courts. Looking at this area, there's no large open area for kids to play ball, play catch, kick a soccer ball around. A lot of the yards, especially in the central area of the community, North Hill, South Hill, Saunderson Heights, are smaller yards with smaller lots. Crapo and Dankworth is a little further south, so this would allow an open play field to engage kids to be a little more active while still maintaining the existing basketball court on the right-hand side, resealing and restriping that. Adding a shelter to that existing paved surface, as well as could have a half-court basketball court here as well for individuals. Improving some of the access into the site off Angular with some new concrete paving, and having the playground encircled by kind of a walking path, as well as benches and seating in that area. So this was the proposed site improvements to the area with the existing playground that we talked about there. So just want to give council a brief update of what we're looking at doing there. And as we move forward, again, continuing to seek some support from other agencies and groups, but trying to move forward with this and complete it this summer. So do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, Art. That looks good.
I just want to be the first person to inaugurate that, so as soon as it's done, I'll be down there putting a scratch in something.
Like I said, we did meet with some individuals from South Hill, Mr. Starling there as well, to try and get some input up front before we move forward, and talked about kind of some of the designs and some of the desires and needs there, and talked about the open play field and the shelter and the playground there. So we tried to get some input as well, and we'll continue to do that through the process, so.
Great,
Excellent.
thank you.
And thanks for the input and helping that. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Next, we have the Downtown Parking Committee Parking Study. Chuck?
I only have about 50 slides to get through, so this shouldn't take too long.
Only 50, all right.
Did you talk about timing? I'm sorry.
I didn't, we're looking to move forward with this spring and summer. So it is something, we're starting to get estimates and bids on stuff. It might be summertime, sometime that we'll have this completed.
Okay, all right.
So, we are working with a couple agencies, talked to a group about doing some of the grading. They talked about working with us on that, and we're gonna do a couple presentations to some of the local service groups and see if there's any input, but are looking to, Ryan Gorley, our park superintendent, is working right now to get estimates and plans and bids together on that.
Now, there's a fairly major event that occurs down there in June. Is this something that you're going to try to coordinate before or after?
We're kind of working on that. We need to see, I guess we've contacted some of the companies on playgrounds and need to see on the timing on that, and we'll coordinate with them on that timing, making sure that it's open during that time, but just don't know the timing on when a playground could be delivered and how long it takes to get individuals in on stuff, so.
Right, so you're staying in communication with some of the
Yep,
groups?
We'll work with them on that. Once we get a little further along, contact the different groups associated with the stuff, see when the timing that works for them to bring it in, and then work with them on what timing works for them as well, so. Want to make sure, yeah, keep it open during those events, but also want to get it completed by the end of this summer season, so.
Do you have anything else long-term for that area and you know, in the comprehensive plan, next 10 years, adding other amenities, restrooms, anything along that line?
To the park, nothing at this time. The shelter is the major one. The playground was the major one that we put in the budget. The shelter was the one that was added after some discussions on some needs down there. But a restroom, currently we have a restroom in Dankwart that is very expensive. It could be something we could look at, but on average, they're in excess of $200,000 just to do a single restroom.
I think that's something we should look at that's one of the few parks that we don't have restroom facilities in. I know we can't do it this year or the next year, but let's see about getting it in the comprehensive plan and down the line.
I think we're moving in the right direction on this, though. I like that.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
I'm glad to see that.
It is something that we do put I know it's not a permanent restroom, but we put a porta potty there and at Saunderson Heights, North Hill, South Hill, Gladys, and the Edwin White Park are all parks that don't have restrooms. Currently Perkins, Dankwart, and Crapo are the only ones that have restrooms. So we try and service those such as this with some alternative means during our summer season.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck? And your 50 slides?
Yep, I'm here to give you an update on the Downtown Parking Committee. In case you forgot, there's 3,800 total spaces downtown. 22% of those are private and 78% are public. That means we have 2,536 free public spaces downtown. Next slide. So the parking study was accepted by the City Council on June 6th of 2016, and part of that resolution accepting the plan advises staff of the city to meet on a regular basis with downtown partners and applicable stakeholders and the City Planning Commission to bring forward parking improvement solutions for consideration and implementation by the City of Burlington. Basically, you authorized us to make a committee to take this study and some of the recommendations made by it, and then start implementing those recommendations and bringing them forward. The parking study evaluated existing conditions, compared them to other communities, and also suggested improvement options. As part of the study process, surveys were done, stakeholder outreach was done, interviews were done, a task force was put together. The purpose of this committee that's been formed is not to gather more information or to make new recommendations. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to already use what's been done and use all the work from Southeast Iowa Regional Planning that's already been done to then go ahead and implement what they've already researched. So who is on this committee? We have representatives from Downtown Partners, Southeast Iowa Regional Planning, the Planning Commission, as well as a downtown business owner. Public Works Director is on it. We have police representation, finance representation, and development department representation. Our goals are to identify parking issues and items that may be addressed to improve the parking situation and perception in the downtown, as well as to bring recommendations forward from the adopted plan to the City Council for consideration and implementation. Some items that we have discussed to date. The first item we talked about was modifying or removing 10-minute parking spaces downtown. That was brought forward to you. Part of it you accepted, part of it you rejected. The 10-minute spaces by the post office remain, which at that point we said we better take a step back and make sure that when we bring recommendations to you, you know the reasoning behind them, and we should also periodically update you so we know that if we're going to start working on something that you all are behind it, so we're not going off in a direction that we're going to waste everyone's time with. So some other things that we've been working on is adding parking to the 200 block of Jefferson Street, which is in the budget for next year. I'd be adding diagonal and parallel parking around there. There's a new coffee shop there. There's some new apartments. It'll really help the area to add some more parking. The big one is improving parking lot signage. This would better identify and use existing public parking lots and identify them better for public and visitors, and ensure the public better understands where and how to use existing lots to see the impact on the use before moving forward with other options. Why signage is a problem is because we have a lot of lots right now that people don't know are open to the public, and they're very underutilized. A great example of this is our ramp. The signs are very small, they don't face the flow of traffic, and from the interviews performed as part of the parking study, a lot of people are not aware that this is public parking. From the graph, you can see the light blue line on the bottom is how many spaces are occupied in that deck at any given time, and you see the times along the bottom. You can see that they're around 10% occupancy, while on-street parking within the vicinity is up around 70, 80, 90% occupancy. So we have these public parking spots, but they're not being used. And we're talking about adding more public parking. We should first try and make sure the parking we already have is getting utilized. So this signage will help direct people and let them know these spaces are available. Your budget item that you have right now, we've said $50,000 to buy these parking lot signs. We've since got a new quote from Iowa Prison Industries. We think we can do what we need to do with only $25,000. So that should help clear a little bit of room.
One of the things that we don't have included in that they need to still find an answer on cost, the entryway sign along
to Burlington?
On Roosevelt, the south entryway sign was eliminated by the U.S. Bank facility as they've gone through their reconstruction project. We're going to have a cost at some point to figure out how to redo an entryway sign that they don't have any sort of a cost estimate, nor do we have a firm location where that would go, but that's something that we would, from a staff perspective, recommend looking at addressing as time over the next year in this area.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different sign, but it's still part of that same concept.
Right. Other items we've discussed is improving public awareness of parking options. We've noticed that other cities have websites that outline all of their public parking options downtown. We could make flyers to pass out to businesses that they could hand to their customers and their employees on where to park, and then, of course, improve signage. We've also discussed bicycle parking. A number of areas downtown have been identified to place bike racks, and we're currently reaching out to Bike Burlington to see if they would like to sponsor any of these bicycle racks. They're not very expensive. We think for about $5,000 we can place 5 or 6 bike rack locations in the downtown. We've also discussed electronic ticketing and pay boxes. Right now they don't have the police don't use an electronic ticketing system. It makes it hard to track when you give somebody a parking ticket. With electronic ticketing, it would allow us to eventually upgrade to electronic pay boxes. If you've been to other bigger cities, they have places where you can put your credit card in to pay for your parking space. We can't do that unless we have an electronic ticketing system. On-street parking time periods, this would be evaluated based on parking lot usage, which with improved signage and awareness. Do we need to change our time limits at all? But again, this is something that we shouldn't act on until we get our off-street parking fully utilized. We need to make sure that it's being used effectively before we look at changing other things. And then shared use of public parking lots. Some people lease spots during the day. We have 24-hour lease spots, but then they're empty at night because they go home. They don't live downtown. So looking at, can we have shared uses for day and night in some of these lease spots? And a little bit more on that. We're looking at alternatives for improved use of existing parking lots, and our pilot project is the 4th and Valley lot. Currently, all of the spaces in that lot are leased. We have 34 spaces. We sent out a survey last week to everybody who leases a spot in that lot, asking how they use their spot. Do they work downtown? Do they live downtown? Or do they just use it to go downtown and shop? And also asking if they would be willing to lease the spot for half days, say from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. in exchange for a reduced annual rent. The thinking there is that a lot of people who lease these spots work downtown, but then they leave during the night, and at that point, the spots could be opened up for residents or people just shopping. We've had 9 surveys come back so far, and so far, everyone said that they would be willing to lease for a shorter period of time in exchange for reduced annual rent. So if this is successful and we change the usage of 4th and Valley, we'd look to do that at other on-street parking lots as well. We will be having an open house to take public input and also update the public on what we're doing February 16th from 5:30 to 7 at the library. There'll be a brief overview and presentation, and we'll go over our plan and objectives. Everyone's welcome to come. It'll be a short presentation and then an open house format where we'll take questions and give answers. Any questions?
Good job, Chuck.
Do you think that we're going in a good direction by looking at the programming of these off-street lots, kind of going to half days?
I do.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Everybody's good with that?
Have you addressed how you would monitor that and take care that you have the right people in there at different times when currently we only staff someone during the daytime hours?
We're working on that. Currently, if you lease a spot and somebody parks in it, it's your responsibility to call the towing company. So if we change how leased lots are used, we'd have to come up with an enforcement method for how to make sure that they're used correctly.
Like a number them, put a little number tag in your.
Except we're not doing the enforcement on it during an evening hours. So that is something that coming up with a solution that's viable is it's easy to talk. It's one thing to talk about. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to figure out how do we make it work successfully.
If anybody can figure it out, Charles, you're the man for the
He's
job.
in charge.
Charles in charge. Only old people know that TV show. Do you guys have anything else for Chuck?
Good work, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Before I go to the last, I want to apologize. I didn't check to see if there was somebody from regarding the Edwin White, Gladys White Park. And there's actually a family member here. Reverend Starling, would you bring? They just had a few words that they want to say, and I don't want to.
Freddie Starling, 517 South 7th Street, Burlington, Iowa. First of all, I want to say to the council, thank you for your support of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. I know it's on the same night of the council meeting, so we do thank you for your support. And to the Human Rights Commission, thank you very much. I just want to say I'm very grateful for the improvement that is being brought before you concerning the Gladys White and Edwin White Park. Thank you. I do want to say, and thank you, Mayor, for acknowledging, having her to be acknowledged. This is Sharon Harris. As you see, she is the niece. Yes, niece. And she is here tonight. She's very concerned. She's very encouraged by seeing what Mr. Eric and the City Council is proposing to do for the Gladys White Park. I wish she would say something, if you don't mind. If you didn't mind.
Well, yes, would you come to the podium, please? A lot of people don't know this, but we used to date back in the 70s.
Excuse me. Let me say that she's a blessed lady. As you see, some years ago, she lost both of her hands. She's a very blessed lady. Yes.
Okay, my name is Sharon Harris, and I'm the niece of Gladys and Edwin White. And just want to say that I'm pleased to be here and pleased with the progress you're making on the improvements of the park. And thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Always good to see you. And those that didn't hear that statement, we used to date back in the 70s. She can't remember. But I remember for her. All right. The last one we have on is the 2017-18 budget for Venue Works, Deb Mulch and company.
And company. I'm John Seal, Chief Operating Officer and Vice President for Venue Works. And before we get started, I'd just like to say I bring good wishes from Steve Peters, President and owner of Venue Works. He's recovering from a knee operation. He had a knee replacement, so he's sitting back at home enjoying another fine part of Iowa. I'm going to introduce our senior management staff from the Ames, Iowa corporate office. Tim Sullivan is here, our Chief Financial Officer. He'll be speaking to you first. Tricia Gagno, our Vice President of Marketing, and John Jimenez, our Vice President of Booking. And then, of course, we'll have Deb Mulch, our Executive Director, chime in many, many times during a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Again, I'm Tim Sullivan, CFO of VenueWorks, and I just really want to thank you guys for allowing us to be here to be part of this process. We know how difficult it is when every year you go to allocate funds to the different departments of the city, and especially when you're talking about public safety issues. I guess the first thing I wanted to say is we're not here arguing that arts and entertainment is more important than public safety. We get it, but we are here trying to bring some of the balance that the mayor was talking about earlier and generate as much economic impact for the city of Burlington and the community as we can. Can you go to the next slide? I don't have the clicker. So this update here on the first slide is our year-to-date budget versus actual performance for the first 6 months of FY17. And as you can see, our revenues we do have a variance, and part of that is due to doing less wedding receptions and banquets than we projected. And additionally, we did try some in-house events, the most notable of which was the New Year's Eve event, where we had budgeted to make a profit of approximately $12,000. In reality, due to poor attendance, we actually lost about that much. So when you see the line with a negative revenue there, that is included in that. Our expenses, we've, excuse me, I was going to say, on the touring ticketed shows that we've done, the attendance, with the exception of the Pat Benatar event, have been pretty close to what we had anticipated. Now, we're always continuing to look for the mix of how many events can we hold, what ticket price the market will bear, and we feel like with the last 12 to 18 months that we've got a pretty good handle on what we should be booking the next year.
You said all of them were good except for the Pat Benatar? Nobody showed up for Pat Benatar?
Can you believe it?
What's happening to the world?
We couldn't either. So when you look at our expenses, our cost of goods sold as a percentage of sales are right in line. The payroll and benefits numbers you see there include both full-time and part-time labor. I guess I'm not going to go through every line, but in general, the operating expenses are on par with what we had budgeted. Sorry. So this next slide is a very brief summary of where we have been the last 2 years and where we're forecasting for FY17. And you can see that we've been able to gradually increase revenues while keeping expenses relatively flat. So we are seeing a reduction in the operating subsidy. Of course, we, like all of you, want to see that go down even further. I'm not going to stand here and say that it's going to be zero, because in reality, well, let me back up. Earlier, I heard about other departments and the possible privatization of the swimming pool, the golf course. There are certain amenities the city often owns that it makes sense to privatize or to sell to a private company. But in reality, there aren't any private companies out there that are buying or building an auditorium or a small arena. They just don't generate an operating profit. The only reason that they make sense is because the economic impact that they provide for the community and the quality of life that they bring to the citizens. So I just wanted to make that point and let you all know that as you go forward and you analyze the different options that you have for the auditorium, to please keep us in mind and come to us for advice and opinions, because that's part of what you're paying us our fees for. So I don't want to take up any more time. I'm going to hand this over to Deb, who's going to talk about some of the things that we're proud of that are going on at the auditorium. Way too many papers on this folder.
I'm Deb Mulch. I'm the Executive Director for VenueWorks at Burlington Memorial Auditorium. And I've been in my position almost a year and a half. So in this time since VenueWorks has come in, we have some, in the last year, we have some noteworthy accomplishments that we feel we would like to share with you. We've improved the third-party promoter relationships benefiting program at BMA. Well, what does that really say? I can tell you a story. When I started in September of 15, I'd been in the job maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I got a call from a promoter wanting to know if we had a date open. He was wanting to bring The Price is Right to the auditorium. And he was asking me, well, what do we do? What services do we have? And he shared with me that he had brought a show to the auditorium a few years ago, and he showed up, and there was one person in the building to put the show on. He was doing the box office. He was trying to be the stagehand. He was doing all the ticketing. So he was very thorough in asking me, what do you have that you can offer? I said, we have people in box office. We hire staff for stagehands. We have people who do production for us. We will work with you throughout the day to make sure that your event goes well. We also have ticketing through Ticketmaster. We have marketing people at corporate that help us with all these things. So he put a date on our calendar to hold. He didn't come last year, but he's coming, bringing his Price is Right live on March 2nd. So in talking to him, if I would have said, well, we don't have anybody here, you're going to be on your own again, he would not have signed. So he's bringing that show to us. We created a suite in the auditorium that we've sold for 3 concerts. I had $1,000 for each show.
Sweet. I had to do that, sorry.
We call it the BMA Suite Experience. We've expanded event concessions starting last January, when we were previously just doing soda, water, beer, that type of thing, and not any hot foods. So we've offered, when it makes sense, pulled pork sandwiches, walking tacos, popcorn, pretzels, and we continue to kind of expand our catering. We had a show come in last November where our staff actually did the hospitality catering for the act. We took care of all of that, and we've also, when we had a craft show, we did our own concessions that day, offered soup and sandwiches to the people. So we continue to grow that and offer that as a service. We've increased patron safety and security with entrance screening, Permar security at ticketed events. We do bag checks and wanding. You may have heard about that earlier last fall, but a lot of touring acts require or request that you do ask if you, what do you do for security at events? So we decided to be ahead of the curve and do that so that patrons would feel safe when they come in to our events. We've also expanded our email database 425% from December 15th to December 16th. I think it was 300 something, and now we're up to about 3,000, I think. So that's due to improved booking and effective marketing. People are interested in what's going on at the auditorium. We have major acts coming in, so they want to make sure that they're aware of those events. This is a breakdown of events in 2014, 15, and 16, and as a comparison, you can see that the number of the events and the attendance has increased. A couple of things to point out. You'll see that wedding receptions went from 12 to 2 and then to 5 in 16. We, I think it was in 2015 when 2 new venues opened up, so the competition for wedding venues is greater than what it used to be, and there's also new places outlying in Burlington, outside of the Burlington area. The Broadway theatrical things would be the shows at Civic Music and the Southeast Iowa Symphony Orchestra, their Pops concert. That's what's reflected in that column. Family shows would be the circus, the annual Christmas Eve Mass that's held there at the auditorium. Sporting events is Snow Bowl and mixed martial arts. On the meeting and conferences, you'll see there's 30 meetings in 2016. 22 of those are the American Legion and the Marines are legacy groups that use the facility at no charge. So they are in our building with their monthly meetings, and then they also have their annual ham and bean dinner. They'll have their Veterans Day service, a Memorial Day service, and a Marine Ball.
Can you back up? Somehow my brain's not catching that. So can you tell me, how many meetings are you having and how many are from?
Okay, and in 2016, you see that 30 meetings and conferences that are held?
Okay, not how many, but how many are?
The legacy groups would have been 22 of those meetings.
So you haven't, okay.
So those are, they use the facility without paying rent. The consumer show would be the craft show that we had. The community and the civic was, we had the Bernie Sanders was there in 2016. That would have fallen into that event. And then the Toys for Tots and the Safe Trick or Treat are also in there. And Toys for Tots and Safe Trick or Treat also use the building free of charge. Okay, on to, to the accomplishments in entertainment under VenueWorks. I'm going to let John Jimenez, who's our Vice President of Booking, talk to you a little bit about that. All right.
Thank you. I don't need to click. So I'm John Jimenez. I oversee programming and content for all the VenueWorks buildings. And this is Trisha Gagno, who...
I think the J's silent. I think it would be Jimenez. How you say
that changed in Arkansas.
You say your name
we
right.
moved to Arkansas. So, and this is Trisha Gagno, who does our marketing. So we're going to tag team here and kind of give you a synopsis of what our plans were. I came on to VenueWorks in July of 2015.
I came on in September of
Trisha
same
started
year.
shortly thereafter. And one of the first projects that Steve brought me to was Burlington, Iowa. I think it was probably the second day that I started there, or shortly thereafter, second day after you started. You know, as a talent agent, I worked at William Morris, sold things to Steamboat Days, knew about the city, never been here. I think you guys have a beautiful building there. It's got a cool vibe. People love playing there. I know it's old, but people dig that old, cool vibe. So, not to steal from the swimming pool, but I think it's definitely a jewel in the rough down there. So when we first came here, we looked at the schedule, which is in 2015, and we looked at the building. A lot of club-type shows with Alien Ant Farm, tribute bands, Tech Nine, that kind of a thing. When we came down and took a look at it, it's an auditorium. It's a building that should be producing better shows, should be hosting, different civic events, something more of a stature that belongs in the Burlington Auditorium as opposed to club shows. So we set out a plan, started putting out offers, came to the table with our first show with Ronnie Millsap. Successful, made a little money, broke even. But we had a formula down. We got our sea legs behind us. We knew we could market. We knew there was a market in Burlington for people to come and check out the shows. So we started loading up. We did Ron White, as you can see. Jay Owen House rented the building from us. All very successful in the get-go. Then we ran into our first hiccup with Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo.
Unbelievable.
It was our first kind of what did we do wrong kind of a situation. And it's a learning process as we go along. You know, there's no crystal ball to tell you what's going to make money or lose money. You know, maybe it was a Wednesday night, it was a church night, maybe it was an acoustic show that turned people off. You know, there's 2 or 3 things that we learned from that event. But it was a learning mechanism, and you know, we took our lumps and we moved on to Lee Bryce that was successful and Aaron Lewis that was successful. So 2016 has been a very much a learning year for us. VenueWorks has invested a lot of time and energy into the building. We really, I think, from when I got here, fostered our partnerships with Civic Music. Snow Bowl remains to be a very good event for us. So we're also working, in addition to bringing these events in, bettering our relationships with our partners, and bringing in our third-party promoters as well.
We spent a lot of time, just to jump into, when we first
Yeah.
came to town, meeting with all of the media partners, meeting with the radio stations, meeting with the newspapers, because we knew that they were going to be absolutely important for us to be successful. You know, one of the things about bringing these national tour acts is we have marketing budgets. Those budgets are going back into your local economy because we're booking advertising, we're booking radio spots, TV spots, et cetera. And Deb kind of touched on it a little bit with the increase in the email database too. A lot of these, you know, people are opening their eyes, they're looking at what's going on at the auditorium, they're signing up for the email club, we're selling more tickets because, and we're able to grow that database of people that are interested in coming to events at the Burlington Memorial Auditorium. That's additional marketing for us. I think one of the largest tell-alls is a little noteworthy note we have up there is that of our Ron White show, over 75% of the people who came to the show were outside of the county. So, you know, I know Steamboat Days also talks about that, but these national touring acts, they're bringing people from outside of your county into your area. They're possibly spending the night in a hotel, they're filling up their gas tank before they leave, they're grabbing dinner before they go to the show. You know, these are the people that typically would have been going to the Quad Cities or Iowa City for these types of shows. Now they're in their backyard.
Okay, it says you sold 1,675 tickets, is that what that stands for?
For Ron White.
For Ron White.
Yes.
What's the capacity?
For that show, Deb, what was it, 1,800? So that's with risers on the floor?
Yep.
So we sold everything except for about 40 tickets. maybe,
Ron
that we could
White
sell.
almost
Outsold Pat
maxes
Benatar.
out and nobody's going to, how many people went to see Pat and Geraldo?
I did. It was 450. Yeah, it was right at 450 people. It was on a Wednesday night and it was the acoustic tour. So, what did we ascertain from that? I'm not giving up on I'm not throwing out classic rock as a viable option here in Burlington. Maybe it's not acoustic, and I don't think I'd do it on a Wednesday or Sunday night. So that's part of the learning process that we've been through, and we took note. You know, I wouldn't go up against high school graduations anymore. And it took me a year to kind of tweak that and figure it out. But now that we have this year-long education per se, and we have some track record from the past year, that's going to enable Deb and her team to go out, secure some more sponsorships as she grows in her role. You know, she's obviously out of the suite. Maybe there's a concert series naming rights organization somewhere that will come. You know, now that we have 5 under our belt, we can do this. There's a market here. You're going to be in front of, 10, 15,000 people and $50,000 worth of ads in your community. You know, it's not a bad thing to jump onto and be successful.
You sat through some of our meetings, so you know that it's not, money's not falling out of the sky, and this was a new thing that we started with VenueWorks. So I'm just wondering how confident are you after the lessons that you learned and taking the lumps going into this coming year with, I know you can't say, man, we're gonna bring in this much, but how confident do you feel from your staff and from the lessons that you've learned that this is going to be a turnaround year for VenueWorks in Burlington?
So on programming side, I can tell you I would feel comfortable with 6 or 8 headline shows. Reason why? There is a limited demographic that you can market to here, limited number of people. I think we figured on 100,000 people that you can market to with a disposable income of X amount of dollars, who can afford to pay 30, 40, whatever the ticket price is for that particular act. In some cases, I think for this market, it's a choice between going to a show or maybe a car payment. And I don't want that to be a hindrance for people not to come. think if we space it properly, we put a month in between, that gives people a chance to reload their cash, and not be so stressed. You know, if it's a choice between providing for your family or going to a show, it's an obvious choice.
Going to the show.
Unless it's profit.
Yeah, no, yeah. The other thing is we try to stay away from other events that we conflict, such as Steamboat Days. I even try to stay away from Tri-State Rodeo a little bit, and Mount Pleasant Old Threshers. Just simply, you know, one, I don't think it's beneficial to our show, because if it's a free show against something you have to pay $30 to, it's kind of a no-brainer. But we also want to be, you know, good citizens to surrounding neighborhoods, and hope that we can get some love in return from their community. So there's definitely a few months that we try to stay away from. Summertime, people tend to want to go outside, go to the swimming pool, go to the fair and that kind of stuff. So, you know, unless it's a really outstanding opportunity, you know, we try to limit programming there. So those are the negatives. But, you know, like I say, in the fall and in the winter months, one a month isn't going to pay all the bills, but, you know, it's something that I think is very achievable. So.
And from the marketing side point, Johnny kind of touched on this too, is, you know, it's a windfall. So as we book more shows and they're more successful as they were in 2016, that opens opportunities for Deb to go out to talk to her sponsors, to go out and talk to her business partners, to tell the story of where Burlington Auditorium was, where it is now, and where it's going. So it's a process that you go through with some of these successes so that she has a story to tell. I believe she now has the story to tell.
So on the flip side of that, you know, the other things that you depend on, meetings, weddings, banquets, that kind of thing. We were just down in the banquet hall earlier today. You know, it's not an excuse, but, you know, you look at some other venues in your market, whether it be the casino that has the hotel attached, or the new wedding places, or what, you know, it could use a slap of paint or something, but that's on down the road somewhere. So, you know, speaking primarily from a ticketed event, concert standpoint, that's where I'd be comfortable, and I'll probably push it a little. I mean, I'll do one or two more, but you know, I think it's very much a balancing act. This is in Chicago, where you have 2 million people, and you know, if a certain portion of them go to a high school football game,
We don't want it to be. We just
Well, no.
we just want to know if can we make this work for Burlington. And,
the building is a very cool building. I know a little bit of the history from when I sold, but you know, the shows that we put in there so far, and I've been to all but one of them, I think, you know, people have been responsive. We've been pleased with the results as a company. But it's not something we're going to be able to put 200 shows in there, ticketed shows a year, and be able to.
Back when we first talked about VenueWorks those number of years ago, I think the comment was made, or one of the selling points was that you might have a show in one of your other venues that would be looking for someplace to go in interim. Is that still you know, moving from one to the next?
Sure.
Here we're in the middle.
Yeah, to answer your question, we do look at those opportunities a lot, primarily with Davenport. Now Joliet's in the mix, so we'll be pulling some things from there. A lot of these things, we don't want to conflict with our partner with Civic Music. So, you know, there's a balancing act of respecting what Barbara and her group does, not competing with her organization. And we've even opened up some doors now to where maybe we'll partner on a few things here and there that doesn't exactly fall into her space, but doesn't fall into our space, and tag team it in that route. But it's something that we look at every day. Some things work, some things don't. There's a lot more, and it's on a case-by-case basis. You kind of look at the market that you have here. You know, is there a true art scene? Can we, for example, in one of our buildings, we tried a show called Lightwire Theater. Just didn't work because the people just weren't into that type of show. But they were in Minneapolis. So not everything that works in every other market is going to work down here. So it's very much a case-by-case basis. But we've taken those relationships with the agents that we've worked on the past year and a half and are getting more looks. We just had a couple more while we've been sitting here. You know, we just try to take advantage of the best opportunities for Burlington. We're not that market that can go out and just throw money and be a P1 market. It's, you know, we take opportunities where we can, like with Lee Brice. It was 6 or 8 weeks out before the show, but we got it at a price that we could do, that we felt comfortable with, and just marketed it for those 6 and 8 weeks and made a go of it, so.
One thing we do learn a lot, and we utilize this data across our venues, is looking at how shows sell, what helps them sell, what types of media to use. So in addition to the routing, we are using that intelligence from building to building as well.
So, you know, one thing we hope that you guys and everyone here has recognized is what we've done the past year, you know, the quality of programs, you know, the frequency is probably about on par with 2015, but, you know, as opposed to, and not to disparage Alien Ant Farm, but Alien Ant Farm, now you're getting a little bit more, you know, it's not 200 people in your room anymore. Now it's 1,000 or, you know, 1,500. And I think as we grow, we didn't get into this place where the building wasn't being used overnight. It's going to take a little time, but I think we made some great strides in doing that. And I think that Deb now has some tools, her and her team has some tools to develop a sponsorship package and to go out and do some things that we need them to do. They have a track record now. So do you guys have any questions or anything?
That is a long slide.
I'm
Johnny.
sorry, I
You really-
apologize for taking up so much of your time, but thank you for listening.
Don't-
You guys have any
don't-
questions or anything?
Don't apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to
Because I want to hear this.
Oh.
before you get to the next slide. Johnny's probably too modest, but there's no way that Ron White would have played here without his relationships and the booking opportunity that it was with our other venues. He's played 7 of our
Yeah,
markets. So I guess I'm answering the routing question, and it's not usually a geographical thing where, you know, we manage a venue here, and you're in the middle. Sometimes it's relationship building and bringing them in later. And
Yeah, we'll let you
pass this
I'm
back
sure
to
there's going to be
Deb.
other questions.
And
but-
honestly, that's why we need somebody like you folks, because we don't have, in our community, we can't sit here and say we have relationships that would do that.
Yeah, well, when I was in Nashville, there was a guy named Brad Garrett that used to bring, that's how I knew, that and Steamboat Days was how I knew Burlington, Iowa. So, in my heart, I knew there was a market here. You just had to get out and push it a little, and we pushed it a little, and, you know, we had a couple of lumps, but, you know, we're refining that and tweaking it, and we're getting there, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You guys have been working hard. Deb?
Okay, we're winding down here. So I'm going to talk about our current year events as accomplishments. We have completed, this is again on a fiscal year. Some of the numbers that we looked at earlier on the events were on a calendar year, but this is in fiscal year 16 and 17. We've completed True Revelation 31, that was mixed martial arts. Last fall, we had Money Shot in the building in October. Aaron Lewis was there. Brian Regan, our New Year's Eve event, the annual Arts and Crafts Show, and the Christmas Eve Mass we have every year. We have contracted for future dates, Civic Music event on February 14th, Mixed Martial Arts, the Iowa Challenge, a different promoter, on February 18th. The Price is Right Live, as I said earlier, is on March 2nd. Snowballs coming up on March 3rd or 9th through the 11th. Another Civic Music dates on March 30th and April 21st. We have booked the Carden International Circus in May, and we have a contract with a wedding reception coming up on September 30th. And then we have pending future events, Jay Owen House. He was here last January. He still has a hold on the 25th. I've talked to him a couple times. He's tried to get a date for the 24th, but we have the Marines in there for an event there, so I wasn't able to accommodate that for him. So I still don't know if he's planning to come to Burlington, to bring his act to Burlington in February. The Burlington School District has 3 concerts in our building in the summer, or in the spring. We're working on a spring craft show. We're also looking at a Motors on the Mississippi Car Show for June, and we have hold dates for wedding receptions this year as well. Some of the other VenueWorks buildings do tattoo festivals. They have a very successful model, so we're looking at perhaps doing that next March in Burlington. There was one here before, but there hasn't been for a few years, so looking at bringing that back.
Barbara Roberts, she'll be really happy to hear about that. She's been,
Gonna sign her up.
she's been wanting a tattoo so bad. Go ahead.
Civic Music, we've contracted with them for their 17-18 dates, that says 18-19. 18-19, I will tell you, is their 90th anniversary season, so they are planning some special things for that. We also, are constantly looking for touring concert possibilities, as Johnny talked about. And then we have the Southeast Iowa Symphony Pops concert each fall, and then the Christmas Mass. So, oops, whoa. Okay, here, back up here. Challenges. The financial impact of the fountain operation, when we, it's not a huge impact to our budget, but yet it is. We hadn't planned for that. When the fountain came back up last year, our water bills started going up. So projecting that from 2015, it was $1,380, and we're looking at over almost $6,000 for 2017, based on what the bills were for the few months the fountain was in operation. Again, it's not a huge amount, but it is something in the budget that we weren't planning for.
Is that scheduled to go away with the flood wall?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Although there's the idea for a splash pad, so we can add something else to their budget that they weren't planning on.
Well, I do, people that
Depending
have,
on whether we can get something done.
That's
on
only
that or not.
$40,000, so don't be worried about it.
Yeah.
but I can tell you that a lot of people, when they're asking about weddings and receptions, is the fountain going to be on? That is a draw, and it does bring people down to the riverfront and to the auditorium. Sometimes they might want to get in there, so we might have to chase them out, but it is an attraction. And also, the challenge is that the legacy groups that use the facility free of charge, they sometimes are in a date when J. Elwyn House would have taken the February 24th date, but that's dates on the calendar for the Marines for their annual ham and bean dinner. So we might lose out on J. Owen House this go around. But so some opportunities that we see, as Tricia and Johnny talked, it's not on here, but is sponsorship. And one of the things I have for my goals this year is to work on sponsorship for the building and for events. We'll continue to partner with the CVB. They do our ticketing at the Welcome Center, and also talk with them about events that might be coming in that will be looking at space possibly use the auditorium. Event sponsorships from vendors. Was approached by a major sponsor who's interested in doing a couple events this summer outdoors, if we could get something put together. And also utilizing the outdoor space more often, like we're going to do the car show, to use the parking lot and try to get people down to that area for an outdoor event. And then also the touring entertainment events. I told you about the promoter and my little story on his experience with the building. I can also share with you that when Aaron Lewis was in our building on Veterans Day, before his group left, I think they had been at 9 or 10 other buildings before they got to ours. They told us that Burlington was their best stop. That was the best concert because of the people that were there, the services that we provided for them, the things that we did. Our staff go way out of their way, I would say, to make sure that people have a great experience when they're in our building. Whatever it is we need to do, we're going to do to take care of it, to make sure that it's a good experience for them. So I think, through VenueWorks, our reputation with promoters continues to increase, and that word gets out. Their network is pretty connected, so people know if somebody has a bad experience in your building, they're going to find out about it. So we work very hard to make sure that that doesn't happen and that we're doing the best we can for them. So, and I'll just add that with Civic Music, that's not really our event, but they're using our building, and we're providing the staffing to bring that event to them. So we consider whatever that goes on at the auditorium, it's our event, it's our reputation that's on the line. So we want whoever is in there to know that, Burlington Memorial Auditorium is a good place to have an event, and they will work very hard to make sure that your event is successful. Okay, we appreciate your attention and your partnership with us, and if you have any questions for any of us.
I've got a comment before, if I may. I just want to say, excuse me, I just want to say Deb and her staff are the keys to the success over there. You know, you've got a key staff of 3 people in a facility. Most of our facilities of that size have 7 to 8 or 10 people working in that facility, and we're operating here with 3 people that are Jacks and Jills of all trades. They cover it all, they do it all. They have grabbed on to new ideas, the expanded concessions, et cetera, which are all adding revenues to the bottom line. They've grabbed onto the ticketing operation and help people in the local community understand how to buy tickets, when to buy tickets, et cetera, which enhances the bottom line. It all enhances the bottom line. It's the staff that's making that work. So kudos to them. They're taking very good care of you. Now, do you have any questions?
Well, you were here when you heard our discussion, so you know how important it is that we
Absolutely,
try to
absolutely.
make something here.
And we do have, you know, I believe our projections for this year continue to reduce the subsidy, and we are working very hard to continue that trend. And Deb, you know, again, the staff's efforts to raise concession revenues, raise sponsorship revenues, raise the revenues from that unused, what was that space up there, the suite? What was it? It was an unused space up top, and to create a suite, a little bit of paint and some chairs up there created a suite. And last year, I believe I was here in March, and we talked about that idea, and it generated $3,000 in sales for shows after that fact for last year. So the potential is just growing, and we feel very good about the auditorium. It's one of my favorite facilities. I'd love to see us somehow generate enough money and enough sponsorships to put a really classic Art Deco paint job on the outside of that baby and just let it rock. So that's in my mind.
I could agree with you.
The inside, you know, the outside is just there. The inside is spectacular. We need to tell the people what's inside. So we're working hard towards that. And maybe we'll find a sponsor to put a jazzy paint job out there on the banks of the Mississippi.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for bringing up the fact that we do have phenomenal employees and city limits, everybody except for Melody. She is just one smidge above the upper crust, but we've got one of the best sound men. I don't know who that little mama is. I can't remember your name. There you go.
I'm hiding behind. I'm just here for performance.
She's there too.
She's making her happen. I'll tell you what, fantastic, and again, I just want to say, you guys have been doing a fantastic job. It's something that we just have not tried before, and these are tough times, and not everything is, you know, goes 100%, but again, I do want to throw that out there. I know some of the things that you guys do that nobody knows about, just, you know, that people tell the mayor stuff that nobody knows, but just the extra things, it's appreciated, it really is, and just want to say thank you for what you do. Where are we at here?
We're done.
All right. Not that we didn't enjoy the time that we spent with you tonight, but we're done. Mr. Teslin, anything before we close? Councilwoman?
No, thank you.
Councilman? I just want to say thanks for everybody for being so wonderful. Good to see you, my friend. Councilman? No. Mayor Pro Tem? Councilman? City Manager, closing remarks?
There is a ribbon cutting tomorrow for the charging stations. It'll be out at Southeast Community College at 4 o'clock on the northwest corner of the building. So I know I think the mayor's set up to be there, and Jerry, I'm sure you'll be there. This is the one that we partnered with Alliant for some funding between. We're doing this along with Hy-Vee, and then we have our own charging station down in our parking lot as well. So that's one that Renewable Energy has done a nice job on helping to get to where we can have that ribbon cutting. Next week, League's Legislative Day. If anyone was interested, I'm signed up to go on Tuesday in the afternoon up to Des Moines and come back Tuesday. Umimra, Upper Mississippi River Association, I'm not going to get all the states on that. They have their conference Friday next week, the 10th, out at the Pizzazz. So for having an association that covers a multi-state area, if you have the ability to attend out there, that would be a great deal. If you do make that decision, please let myself or Annette know. That's all I have.
That's it?
I get to be on the radio.
Does anybody from the council want to be on the radio as well?
Because he doesn't like me on the radio.
That goes
I
without
said
saying.
as well.
Oh, as well.
Because,
It's off the
budget.
okay.
not available.
Well, does that mean that we, does that mean we won't be on the next week, or?
No, it would mean you would be on the next page.
Well, it's my turn, so.
Are you in? Okay. We've got the mayor pro tem, city manager.
Then you'll have to find someone to be on next week, by the way, but go ahead.
And anybody else?
I'll be there.
Okay. I just may come down. It's been a while since I've got a chance to do that with you, so. If there's nothing else, then we're gonna, this is a council meeting, so we're not taking extras, but you know what? What is it that you wanted? Can you say it in like 3 seconds?
No.
I'll make this quick.
I can't turn him away. Sorry, guys.
Okay, the heck with the mic. I have a big mouth, loud voice. Number one, I hope it's still good on Mount Pleasant Bridge to build a new Mount Pleasant. Number two, everybody, Cascade Bridge, Cascade Bridge, Cascade Bridge. It'd be nice if we had a new Cascade Bridge. Number two, number three, parking downtown. We do need, you're gonna get more apartments, you will need more parking.
I gave him 3 minutes and he went over. Thank you, Dean. Good
Thank
night,
you, bye.
everybody. Woo!